Well, welcome everyone. We're very excited to showcase our molecular and systems pharmacology PhD program that we have here at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Mick Varvel, and I am an assistant professor in the Department of Pharmacology and Chemical Biology. And I have the honor and the duty to serve as the Director of Recruiting for the MSP program. And now I would like to introduce you to Niall McCarthy, who is our program director. Niall.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm the director of the MSP program. This is a role that kind of rotates to the MSP faculty every several years. I've been director for 1 year, but I've been a member of the MSP program since it started many, many years ago. I'm full professor in the Department of Pediatrics, and really appreciate you joining us here today. I do want to point out, for those of you who are joining late, we're recording this in part because we want to be able to share this with other people that might not have been able to join at this specific time. So thanks for your cooperation with that. Deanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deanna Williams. I'm an associate professor in pharmacology and chemical biology. I serve on the MSP faculty recruitment committee, or I serve as the faculty member for the recruitment committee for MSP program. I'm also new to Emory. I joined here in January, and I've had a really great time so far. And looking forward to getting to know more of you and answering some questions later on. Thanks for coming today.
Okay, thank you, Deanna and Niall. I just wanted to let everyone know that during the presentation, we are going to keep everyone muted just to cut down on background noise. And at the end of the presentation, we will open it up for questions, and we will have everybody unmuted so that you have an opportunity to ask questions if you have any. So just a brief overview of what we plan to share with you tonight to showcase our program is first we're going to have a program overview, and that'll really be sort of split up between Niall and I. We'll each take a couple slides to showcase the program and mainly what we have to offer our PhD students, our graduate students. And then I'll go over really briefly our application process. What is required, what is optional, and then perhaps some just tips on making your application strong for the review by the faculty recruitment committee. And then finally, we're going to have a faculty highlight, and that's going to be really our newest MSP faculty member, Deanna Williams. We'll showcase some of her excellent and really groundbreaking work in the space of inflammation and HIV research. And then finally, we'll open it up to questions. At the conclusion of our presentation today, we are going to be giving you a code that you can use for your waiving your application fees for Emory University. So just to further hopefully entice you to apply to our program. Okay, Niall, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Nick. A couple things we want to tell you about how the program is structured and how we fit into the graduate school at Emory overall. And Emory has a fairly large graduate school given its size as a university, actually. But within that grad school, we have a division called the Graduate Division of Biological and Biomedical Sciences, or GDBBS, that has 8 interrelated and non-departmental graduate programs. The MSP program is one of those. You can see the other 7 that are listed there. This has been a really, really successful model for graduate education for, I think it's 35 years now with this division. And the division has, it is the coalescing force for basically everybody that's doing biomedical or biological research at Emory. And you can see we have over 300 faculty in the GDBBS. It's about 370. Oops. And those faculty come from a wide range of departments and parts of the university, heavily in the School of Medicine. We have faculty at the Yerkes Primate Research Center, which is a little bit off campus, kind of hidden in the woods so people can't find it. School of Public Health, School of Nursing, the Emory College, the undergrad college, the CDC, which is literally on Emory land right across the street from the main campus, Georgia State University and Georgia Tech, which are roughly 6 miles away from Emory. And of those 300 or 370, we have 54 faculty right now, including Dr. Williams, who's our most recent recruit, in the MSP program, and those are drawn from 16 different departments. And that's really great for you because you get to pick sort of the broad areas that you want to be associated with. And we'll talk more about that later. The GDBBS has over 400 students in it, and very good point for you to know is that students can choose their research mentors from any faculty member in the GDBBS, even if that faculty member is not part of MSP. So you get real flexibility on who you decide you want to work with. Okay, next. This is how our MSP program is organized right at the moment. I'm the director. We have a program administrator who works only on MSP and one other BCD program, so we have half of his time. His name is Jewel Gatling. Then we have 2 directors of graduate studies. We have one for students pre-qualifying exams and one for students post-qualifying exams, the junior and senior DGSs. We have a very active DEI committee that is led jointly by a student and a faculty member. The student right now is Ali Sue, and the faculty member is Dr. Hansen. Then these are the other main parts of the executive committee, the admissions recruitment chair, Dr. Varvel, exam chairs, Dr. Chandler, membership chair, that's faculty membership chair, is Dr. Sheehan, communications chair, Dr. Quave, curriculum chair, Dr. Lynn, and our program is very closely linked to an NIH T32 training grant, which supports several of our students every year. And the PI on that training grant is Dr. Hall. And then we always have student representatives that are part of the executive committee that really bring us issues from the students. Right now, Diane Choi is one of those, and we're in the process of voting for the next one. They join in sort of overlapping tenures. Next slide. In the 2023 to 2024 academic year, here are some stats for you. The 12-month stipend last year was $38,404. That's gone up this year already. And because Emory University's grad school has very recently, like over the summer, just voted to unionize, the stipend is likely to go up quite a bit as a consequence of that. So we don't even know, I don't even know what the new stipend is going to be. But one of the things that we are proud we've been able to do is to provide a half month of stipend payment to every new student as they come in to help with, you know, getting moved, getting the first month's rent deposit kind of thing for your apartment or whatever costs you have for your initial move to Atlanta. The LGS provides a really competitive financial package, including the stipend. Tuition is 100% scholarship. You don't ever pay it. There's a 100% subsidy for student health insurance. Then now, this is a new benefit, includes health, dental, and a family option. There are 3 different categories of professional development funds from the grad school that every student has access to. There are some acceptance fellowships for the really great students that apply, some completion fellowships for students who need a little bit of support, financial support, to finish their degrees. And we have a hardship fund if you get ill or your spouse or partner gets ill or things like that, that we can support, you know, temporary needs for a student. And I do recommend you go to the LGS website funding page to learn more of those details if you're interested. Next slide. So you're interested in the Molecular and Systems Pharmacology program at Emory. We are ranked top 5 in the country, and this is not a little spike. We've been in the top 5 for years and years. Pharmacology really is one of Emory's greatest research strengths. For example, cancer pharmacology is a really big part of what we do. That photo, the top photo of those 3, is the Winship Cancer Institute, which really focuses on cancer in adults. And then the Aflac Cancer and Blood Disorder Center is part of the Department of Pediatrics, which is one floor above me. And together, those combine cutting edge research with patient treatment right on campus. Neuropharm is an enormous part of what we do, with the Emory Primate Research Center really being an attractive force for people that are doing their research in non-human primates. And then, as I said, the proximity to CDC for anybody interested in infectious disease and pharmacology in that domain has really helped make Emory a leader in things like antiviral research, especially for anti-HIV work and anti-hepatitis C work, et cetera. But then there are other strengths that might not be called pharmacology at Emory, such as in the cardiovascular space. Toxicology is part of our program. Chemical biology is a big new thing at Emory these last few years. Structural biology and gene therapy as drugs. Next. Currently, there are 46 PhD students, but actually this should be down to 45 as of today, because Rachel Jang, who's in that photo up on the top left, just defended successfully today. So she is now Dr. Jang. And so congratulations, Dr. Jang. Actually, so this photo gallery is from last academic year, and several of the students on here, including Bethany, Catherine, Sophie, have already defended and graduated and are moving on in their careers. So that's a really good thing. That's what we want to do with our students. We're going to talk more about the sense of community that we have in our program, and that is something that we really strongly pay attention to. On the far left is Eli Ullman, who won the Dr. Eddie Morgan Leadership Award in the MSP program last year. And he's going to defend, I believe it's either next week or the week after. So we really, we think about 2 things in our program: community and rigor. The community is there to help with making it through the rigor and help you accomplish your goals. But we know you're human beings, not just machines, right? So we have to really think about what you need to be kept resilient as you work on earning the highest degree in the world. So we're here for you during that process. Next slide. One of the components of that is this really great club that is called Students in Pharmacology, but I think if you read the acronym, you can really get the gist. It's SIP, right? And so next slide. They, officially, the SIP group is driven to promote collegiality and goodwill between grad student researchers in multiple disciplines and anybody that's interested in pharmacological sciences, whether they're in MSP or not, frankly. And connections with researchers. But the unofficial response really is that they get together and have good times and sip beer quite a lot. So it's a very important part of our community organization. Next slide. Previous events they've had recently are, paint night. So painting ceramics and stuff like that, do or die, a summer tie-dye gathering, doses and mimosas, get the joke. Sip wine and wax, I think that was candle making. And then there's a Halloween party coming up right when you would expect it to be. So food's always available, and dietary and drink restrictions are taken very seriously. So if you have any of those, let us know. Next slide. So here's just some photos from a couple of these events. the paint night on the left, and I think this was the just food and drinks at one of the events on the right. And here's the team of leaders for the SIP group. Erica Brown is the president. She's in the lab 2 doors down from me. Jonica Brown on the top right corner is my student. These tend to be all women that are interested in drinking and painting things, which is kind of interesting. But they're very active, and you can see that they span across from second year all the way up to 5th year. So we don't just have, you know, old students that are doing this kind of stuff. Next slide. Okay, one of the things that is really important for you to know is that the MSP program is very aware that not everybody wants to take their doctorate and stay in academic research. It is not our goal to clone ourselves and turn you all into professors that grow white hair. We really take seriously the goal of helping you accomplish your career goals and help you get set up for whatever kind of career you're thinking about, whether it's in industry, academics, biotech. We've had students go off and spend most of their time doing teaching. We have lots of folks that do government research. Patent law is a really big career outcome for a lot of us. Nonprofit disease foundations, policy writing, science writing. We have, in fact, Eli Ullman, the guy I showed you a minute ago, is already on the national scene in the policy space regarding regulations for pharmaceutical industry. So we know that you are coming to Emory for your career, not for our careers. And it is our job and our responsibility to help you accomplish your career goals. Next slide. So how do we help you accomplish your professional career goals? Well, if we're going to think about this by looking at this circle in the middle. And if you weren't muted, I would ask you to say, what do you recognize about that circle in the middle? Right? So just think about that for a second. Number one, it is exactly in the middle of the slide, so it really is the central focus. Number two, everything, the lettering, the circle are red. We always use red to indicate like super important, right? Really to catch your eye. And the lettering is in bold and even has black, you know, trace around the letters. So this is the main thing that you come to a PhD program to do, right? And what we do is to help you learn critical thinking skills, problem solving skills in several different areas, technical skills that are in the specific part of pharmacology that you're most interested in, and then generating new knowledge. You have to generate new knowledge to earn the PhD because we need to know that you've actually done something. And the way we know you've generated new knowledge is to submit it for publication, and, you know, goes through the gauntlet of peer review. And the reviewers, the anonymous reviewers, say, yeah, this is new and really adds to the field of knowledge. So those are the 4 things that are absolutely key. You will not get your PhD if you don't do those 4 things. However, animate. Next slide. That's not enough to set you up for getting whatever kind of job on the previous slide you want, right? So if you just earn a PhD, that doesn't necessarily set you up for getting exactly the job you want. So we also pay attention to professionalization. And that includes all these little bubbles that Nick can now animate in. So we give you teaching, we teach you in project management, communication, time management, leadership, team building, conflict management, innovation, and the business and law of science, because many of you might go into industry or other commercialization aspects where you really need to know some of that stuff. And frankly, all of us that are even academic PIs, we're very often developing new technologies and discovering new drugs, turning those into small companies. Several of our faculty have companies that they've started out of their academic work. And so we want to make sure you understand at least the basics of how that process works and what that part of the sort of spectrum of pharmacological research involves. So again, doing what's in the middle will get you the PhD, but might not allow you to get the job you really want. And that's why we add in these professionalization skills in the kind of green circle. Next slide. All right, so let's just talk very broadly about academic progress through the program. In the first year, we have all of our students do 3 rotations. So the rotations are where you pick a faculty member, usually in the MSP program. And in fact, the first one has to be someone in the MSP program, but then the others can be just someone else all around Emory, where you sort of are learning what their lab is about, what their kind of research is about, seeing if it's the stuff that you want to work on for the next few years, and actually gives the PI of that lab the opportunity to see you in action. So rotations are a really key part of getting off to a good start in grad school. And of course, there are required courses. At the end of the first academic year, you will select your research mentor if he or she agrees to take you on. And at the summer, during the summer, at the end of the first full year, we have all of our students go through teaching assistant and teacher training opportunities that the grad school leads. So we don't force you to become a teacher, but we want you to get at least a little bit of skills in this, because every scientist really is a teacher at some point. You're trying to convince people of your story and your results and your conclusions. So a lot of this will help you with, presentation skills and thinking about how to convince people of your scientific findings. Then in the second year of grad school, we have a grant writing class that's really good, even if you're not going to be an academic. Everyone will have to eventually, no matter what their job description is, will have to be able to write and convince people of your ideas. And so that's done via this grant writing class. Every student serves as a TA, usually a very low bar task. It's a couple of electives, and you're really launching into your research in that second year. Truly, you're launching into research at the end of the first academic year, so during the summer of your first calendar year. And then we have a qualifying exam, which is after the spring term of year 2. It's largely based on the written research proposal that you write in the grants class and a little bit of demonstration of general pharmacology knowledge. Then in year 3, you might have another elective or 2 if you plan to take some, and you're really focusing on research. And at that time, after you pass the quals, you are admitted to doctoral candidacy, which basically means you're full-time research. Okay, next slide. I mentioned at the beginning, we have this training grant, NIH training grant. It's called Pharmacological Sciences Training Grant, something like that. I forget the full name. And we select the best students. Students are nominated by their PIs if they want them to be on the training grant. And we select the best students. It provides enhanced stipends, some money for research or research-related or training-related travel. It provides some money for professional development, including if you want to go take a course at Cold Spring Harbor, something like that. Maybe buy a new laptop for your work. The benefits of this are it really is good to show on your CV, even if you don't stay in academia. It shows that you were selected for this, and it is definitely a competitive process, right? And then many other GDBBS programs have overlapping training grants. I'm actually PI on 2 training grants, not this one, but 2 other ones that support some of our students. And it's really, really a great environment at Emory because of these training grants. We have lots of way to support our students. But then also, we just talked last slide about how we have our students write an F31 NIH research fellowship proposal. And actually, we're so good at teaching those grant classes that Emory ranks #1 in the country for the number of F31 student fellowships in the nation. And this has been the case almost every year for the last 10 years. So that's a real source of pride for us, because not only does it mean that we're punching above our weight, because Emory is a relatively small school compared to Hopkins and places like that, but we really do a good job of teaching our trainees how to write these F-31 grants so that they actually get funded. Next slide. So here's just a repeat of that first year curriculum. Don't have to go over this in detail. There is a focus in the fall semester on ethics in kind of two forms. The Jones program in ethics is something that every Laney grad school student has to take. And then ethical issues in pharmacology is in the first and second semester of the first year. The meatiest thing you're going to be doing is taking the Principles of Pharmacology course. That's 10 credit hours in the fall semester and 3 in the spring. And then we have a graduate seminar course that I currently lead along with one other faculty member that teaches you really how to present science and how to think about presenting either someone else's science, like a paper, or your own science as you move along through the program. Next slide. So a little bit more about the research rotations. I mentioned that this is really an important thing to do. Before the academic year really gets rolling, we have this little gig that we run that we lovingly call the dog and pony sessions, where the faculty that are interested in hosting a student for rotations comes in and gives you just like a 15-minute presentation on the kind of work that they do in their labs so that you can know more about them. And then the students will, usually pick one, maybe two. They'll pick the first and the second rotation. And the point of the rotation is acquisition of lab skills and knowledge, as well as really just getting to know if that group is the kind of group that you want to work with. Some people want to be in a very small lab. Some people want to be in a very big lab. Some people want to do animal research. Some people faint at the sight of an animal in research conditions. So you really get the option to understand what these different labs offer for your training. And then the junior DGS, sorry for the typo there, the junior DGS helps you with selecting a rotation lab. That's the schedule shown there. You can see basically how long they are. They're 2 months-ish long. And in order to officialize the selection of your rotation mentor, you have to get approval from the DGS. These are graded. There are written reports and oral reports. There are evaluations that lead to a grade in that first part of your program. And, one of the things you're going to learn is the expectations of time and effort from the program in terms of how much time you should be spending on your research and your mentor, your rotation mentor. And sometimes it's not a good match, but that's why we do these rotations, so you can have a good match. Next slide. Okay, you're up.
Okay. Yep. Well, thank you very much, Niall. That was a fantastic overview of the program. For the next couple slides, I just want to focus on really the tremendous infrastructure and resources we have here at Emory University. I think over the past 15 years, we've had tremendous growth, and all of you can benefit from this. I want to start off by saying that we have tremendous cores here at Emory. Everything from several flow cytometry cores to imaging, state-of-the-art microscopes. I think we've just started an organoid core. We have a genomics core to help you assess the integrity of the nucleic acid that you might be looking at in your research. So for the next couple, at least this slide, I just want to highlight something that I know that is really one of our strengths here at Emory University, and that is drug discovery, drug development. And we have, as one of our centers, we have the Emory Chemical Biology Discovery Center. That it really is it's a recognized academic high throughput screening center that's involved in drug discovery programs at both the national and international levels. The center has several capabilities with multiple integrated robotic systems for drug screening, as well as a large collection of small molecule compound libraries for again the high-put screens. And this center has done an excellent job in accelerating transition of basic science or discovery-based science discoveries into biology, and then finally for the identification of novel targets and therapeutics. So this is something that is one of our great strengths here at Emory. One of the newest centers that we have here on campus that was founded by Dr. Dennis Leota and Dr. Haiyan Fu. Both these scientists, Dennis and Haiyan, are members of the MSP program and very much involved in drug discovery here at Emory. And they have recently founded this Center for New Medicines, which will help foster a culture where young discovery scientists like yourselves can flourish and enrich and hopefully sustain a pipeline of new therapeutics. Emory is actually one of the top academic institutions in the country for the development of new vaccines and drugs that have eventually gone on to FDA approval. So this is science that you can really be a part of and see it truly go from the bench or to the bedside.
Yeah, and a couple of things we want to point out on this slide and the next one, I think it's the next one, are some of the real research strengths. So for instance, the Emory Department of Pediatrics that I happen to be in is a top NIH Research Award recipient. So there's this really great listing that comes out called the Blue Ridge Institute listing that tells us the ranks of all departments in certain fields. So we get this for the Department of Pediatrics, and for the last 5 years, Emory's Department of Pediatrics has been in the top 5 for NIH funding across the whole nation. And in some years, we've been number 1. We've been number 1 twice in the last 5 years. So this is just an example of the kind of growth and momentum in research at Emory. It's really kind of an amazing place to be. Back to you, Nick.
Yep. So we actually been quite successful here at Emory with translating all that NIH money to impactful knowledge that is recognized by some of the top international science journals. And here I just want to highlight work that was done in the through a collaborative effort between Steve Tronilis and this is Dr. Leota again. Between their laboratories, again, both of them are MSP faculty members, and Elijah, who's one of our current MSP students, at least for the next week or two, had a substantial contribution to this high impact paper that was published in Nature just a couple weeks ago, I believe.
Yep.
In addition to public, our students routinely have their work published in very high impact journals that are widely read throughout the scientific community. And here is just just an example of the breadth of knowledge that is generated by the students that are training in our MSP program. In addition to doing your science and publishing papers, many of our students go on to showcase their work at both international and national conferences. So here are just two pictures of two of our current students. Oh, excuse me. Lucy is a third-year student, and Jules McNeese is a second-year student. And they recently had the tremendous opportunity to go to Belgium to showcase some of their work at an HIV conference. So here are both of them standing in front of their posters, and then over here on your right-hand side is them in action, enthusiastically sharing their work. Our faculty are leaders in their field. So this is Randy Hall, and he was recently elected as the next president for the American Society for Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics. So as a pharmacologist, this is your professional organization. It's worth pointing out that Randy is actually the sixth president, faculty. He's the sixth member of the Department of Pharmacology and Chemical Biology to serve as the president of ASEP. So Emory has a long reputation of being leaders in the pharmacological space here in the United States. Niall.
Yeah, we don't just discover drugs in order to make money, in order to get famous, right? We really want these to be translated to the clinic and to be in use. But one of the ways that we can sort of monitor and figure out Emory's status in that process of not only doing cool science, but doing important and impactful science is to look at how those discoveries are turned into technology that's transferred to the clinic. So a recent study in this Journal of Technology Transfer, and this slide was provided by the Office of the Senior Vice President for Research. So this paper in Journal of Technology Transfer showed in 2022 that Emory was number 3 in the world for the number of new drugs discovered per institution. So those rankings are shown on the left there for the top 5. The NIH overall beat us. Yeah, no surprise. The University of California system, which includes 10 institutions, right? All 10 campuses, UCSF, UCLA, blah, blah, just above us. And then little tiny Emory up there playing with the big guns had 18. And then the others are even outside of the next 2 are outside of the US. And then similarly, if you ask how much licensing income in terms of adjusted gross income came to these institutions, Emory ranked 2nd in the nation as ranked by the Association of University Technology Managers 2 years ago. And that's the most recent data I have. So Emory is really very active in this space and very successful in doing it. Go ahead.
Okay, so for the next slide, I just want to go over some of the application materials that will need to be submitted if you wish to be considered for admission in the program. And first, I want to point out that I think we have our graduate school has put together a great website. I think it's pretty informative. Sometimes you kind of have to look around for the information that you're truly interested in, but I do think it's pretty good, and most of the answers to your questions will be there. So for the MSP program, we require at least 3 letters of recommendation. We've in the past we have seen a 4th. That's usually not a problem, that you can upload a 4th letter of recommendation. We also have a statement of purpose, and Niall and Deanna, they can also chime in here on things that you're looking for a statement of purpose. But we really want to know what drives you intellectually, right? Why do you want to pursue a PhD? And this can be, this is also a bit of a personal statement. Perhaps it's some, a life event that has turned you on to science, or what would quench your thirst? What would quench your thirst of knowledge? Why the Emory MSP program? We want people that want to be here. We want to be good fits, and that really is a 2-way road. One component of that, of course, is to ask yourself, which faculty at Emory would I be interested in working with, or what aspects of their research do I interest me? We really want to know these things in a statement of purpose. It is also it's well worth your effort to reach out to faculty that you might be interested in rotating with and eventually joining their lab, and seeing if they will be taking students in a time frame that would be conducive for your PhD training. We asked for just a copy of your transcript from each university you have attended. Many of you would likely have a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts, but some of you might be coming from just getting a master's degree or perhaps some other type of advanced training. And we'd like to see all those transcripts. Transcripts that are not in English must be translated to English and then subsequently notarized. We have many applicants that are residents or citizens of countries where English might not be an official or widely used language. We also ask for, rather, it's in your best interest to provide an evaluation of an international transcript. Just maybe your grades are handed out a little bit differently. It might not be on a 4-point scale that where many of our faculty are used to evaluating. And you can, there are several companies and links to websites on the graduate school's website, where you can go to have your international transcript evaluated so that we can understand it. GRE scores are not required. And we do ask that, we recommend that you provide a diversity statement. Here at Emory, we pride ourselves in being, accepting of people from, many different backgrounds, and we do recommend that you do provide a diversity statement. The applications are due on December 1st. That's a hard deadline for every year. Sometimes we ask if people can have extensions, but that becomes very difficult because that's a really hard deadline on the national level, and our graduate school does adhere to that. So after Deanna's presentation, we can take further questions that you might have about the application process or about the program in general. So now I want to introduce you again to Deanna Williams, who, as I had said before, is an associate professor in the Department of Pharmacology and Chemical Biology. She is the newest member of the MSP faculty, and I really want to highlight this, that just completely, reinforces Deanna's impact that she has had in the biomedical sciences the past couple of years. So she was recently acknowledged as one of the 10 early career scientists, highlighting some of the biggest problems in our world today. And so here she is. So we're very happy that she is a part of our program, part of my department, and I would now like to introduce Deanna Williams. One moment, there you
go. Thanks so much, Nick, and thank you for that very kind note. I'm really happy to be here today and to tell you a little bit about some of the work that we're doing in my lab and the passion behind the work that we do. So you won't be seeing much data, but we can talk about it, and I'll happily talk about data anytime. So as a whole, my lab is really interested in treating for HIV broadly, but very specifically also looking at the brain. And we're trying to do this from a personalized medicine approach. Oh, next slide, please. And we're really interested in this because HIV disproportionately impacts marginalized populations, while everyone is pretty much vulnerable or permissive to HIV, aside from a few people that are genetically very lucky. Everyone can acquire HIV if they're exposed to the virus. That's biology. But there are many things outside of biology that also impact people. And that's what I've become really interested in. And so HIV is disproportionately impacting sex workers, people with injection drug use or substance use disorders, queer folks, racial ethnic minorities, and people experiencing houselessness. These things are very tricky to model in the lab, but I think it's important that we understand ways to treat everybody suffering from a disease, and not to look at it just from a neutral blank state of this is my cell, this is my virus. We have to consider the people behind the disease, and that's the crux of what I work on. Next slide. And I think the reason why this matters so much to me personally is because health inequities are integrated in the HIV pandemic, and they have been from the very beginning. Many of you were not born when HIV pandemic was in its infancy. I also was not even conceived. My mom was a child at that time. But in the 80s, early 80s, it was a completely different thing than you see today. At that time, people were begging the government to do research into HIV because people were just dying within years or months of being diagnosed. And the reason why we weren't dedicating funds and effort to this research was because of politics and stigma behind the disease. Um, Next slide, please. Due to lots of advocacy and intervention by people who put their lives on the lines, we now have these amazing therapies to treat HIV called ART. They stand for antiretroviral therapy. And you can see in those early 80s, we had nothing for a lot of years. And then when we get to the mid 90s, we start getting more medications. That's when we got the first version of the medicines that we use today. But those are still kind of older medications. Then as we move into the 2000s, you see just an explosion of new therapies. And now we have a ton of options. Um, we even have medications now that can prevent acquiring HIV if you're exposed to the virus. So it really has transformed how we think about HIV. People are not dying anymore within months of being diagnosed. Next slide, please. And through the work of many outstanding scientists and doctors, we now have these therapies that are given in a combinatorial fashion. So they're called ART or CART. And so how they work is you give a therapy that is targeted at different steps of the viral life cycle. So for instance, you take a therapy that prevents the virus from binding to your cell. If it can't bind, it can't infect you. You may combine that with a therapy that prevents key enzymes from working, like reverse transcriptase. That enzyme is critical for helping the viral RNA become viral DNA. And maybe you combine that with an integrase inhibitor. This enzyme prevents the integration of the viral DNA into the host genome. This drug is particularly important because integration of HIV DNA into our own genomes is why we can't cure it. It's really hard to excise the virus from our cells. And so by giving these therapies in combination, next slide, we now have just a completely amazing opportunity to suppress the virus in the plasma to below detectable levels. And as the schematic is showing, we begin CART treatment upon diagnosis, and within 3 to 6 months, we can't find virus at all in your plasma. You may have a little blips every now and again, but by and large, it's undetectable. Next slide. And while this is really fantastic, this is not a cure. Remember that DNA is in you forever. Um, and it can make more virus whenever it feels like it, even when you're getting treatment. And so now you can imagine if you stop treatment for any reason, the virus can rapidly rebound. And now you're going to be viremic as if you were never treated at all in the first place. So we have great medications, but they are not a cure and they're imperfect. Next slide, please. And so because of this, HIV still remains a major problem today. Next slide. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is trying to treat the entire body effectively because these therapies work fantastic in the plasma, but they are not as effective in your tissues. These data show people that have HIV that were not on therapy, that began therapy in time, they took biopsies at the initial time point, 1, 3, and 6 months post-treatment. You can see they measured HIV in the tissues in purple, and then they measured the concentrations of 3 different HIV medications in blue, red, and green. You also note some dashed lines. Those dashed lines indicate the desired therapeutic dose to efficiently suppress HIV. And what you'll see is that even at that 6-month time point where I mentioned the plasma HIV is undetectable, that doesn't happen at all in lymph nodes or in the intestine. And you can also see that aside from one drug, atazanavir in green in the ileum, no drug ever reaches its desired dose in addition to suppress HIV. So they are there to some extent, but it's nothing like the plasma. Next slide, please. And so because of this, we have awesome medications, but HIV can still persist in tissues, even when you're treated. And you can see just the host of tissues shown below, where you can find HIV DNA, that's the silent kind of latent virus, HIV RNA, that's rapidly and actively transcribing, viral proteins, and infectious virus. And then even a virus that is genetically distinct or compartmentalized from the blood. Next slide, please. And because we have this virus that our body can never get rid of, our body is continuously hosting an immune response against it. And we want immune response, that's very good. We want it very, very acutely in first hours to days. But because you have HIV for decades, you have chronic inflammation. And this chronic inflammation damages your organs and causes all kinds of problems in the long term. Next slide, please. And so because of this, HIV can affect, infect, and damage pretty much every organ in the entire body. My lab cares a lot about the brain because we're really interested in the cognitive and mood disorders that impact people because they're really overlooked and they profoundly impact your quality of life. But you pick your favorite organ, there's going to be some dysfunction during HIV. Next slide, please. And so in my lab, we're really interested in looking at that interplay between CART treatments and inflammation in the brain in HIV. Next slide. Next slide. There's an animation that didn't work. There you go. We do this, back one more. We do this in a couple of ways. So we do this looking at immune cells. We will have in vitro models of the blood-brain barrier. We use those models a lot to see how HIV medications can enter into the brain, or do they enter at all? We do a lot of genetic work. This is particularly important because we're interested in treating all people effectively. And oftentimes, many enzymes that are involved in pharmacologically breaking down or transporting the CART medications have polymorphisms that are aggregated by race. And so that contributes to those health disparities that we saw in my very, very first slide. So we can look at those polymorphisms in cells and figure out why those enzymes may work more or less effectively to help people broadly. We're interested in energy metabolism, which is incredibly important for just brain function, all function, but especially the brain, because it requires most of its food from the periphery in. We're super interested in substance use, as again, one of those risk factors that make you have a bigger chance of acquiring HIV and then impact your outcomes once you have HIV. And they're also really interested in the social factors, like the environment in which people with HIV grew up in or live in now. Maybe they came from background that had low income, lack of access to food, mental health issues. All those things impact how the disease progresses. And so we do this with in vitro studies. We do a lot of work with primary human cells in my lab, so cells from people with and without HIV. I also have an affiliate position at the primate center here. And so I also do macaque work. We do a lot of that for substance use studies. And then we also do large cohort studies in collaboration with clinicians. And so we'll get biospecimens from people that have HIV and we'll tie that to their cognitive data or their depression data, for instance. And so we go all the way from in vitro with one cell, with one molecule, all the way up to people. Next slide. And I'll end by just showing some of the projects we have ongoing right now. We're interested in seeing how these CART therapies get into the brain. And so we do a lot of work on the blood-brain barrier. We're finding really interesting things that we have those mechanisms that exist, but cocaine actually changes them completely and prevents some therapies from getting into your brain and also increases other therapies from getting in. We're looking at immune cells getting into the brain because they're the ones that are infected and can bring the virus with them. We look at sex differences and how this plays out for cognitive and other neurologic function. We look at antiretrovirals themselves as contributors to neurologic dysfunction during HIV. Those treatments are not inert and they may have effects that we need to consider. I mentioned before, we look at energy metabolism. We're really involved in neuroinflammation, both peripheral and that of glia cells in the brain. And then we're looking at cannabinoids, namely THC and CBD, to see if they can help suppress some of that inflammation. Next slide. And so as a whole, we're trying to see if we can make the right therapies for the right people among the spectrum of folks living with HIV in the world. So we can hopefully have going from the left, where you see some drugs work better for some people or less effectively, to them all working equally effectively for every person. That may involve giving people different amounts of drugs or differing drugs, considering their genetic background, lifestyle factors, the way in which they grew up in the road, access to food. All those things impact your biology. Next slide. And so with that, it is incredibly important that I acknowledge my lab. Like other faculty here at MSP, we are really, really passionate about supporting our trainees, not only in the research, but as we mentioned, and pursuing their career goals. And so I have 3 PhD students, 2 postdoctoral fellows, 2 undergrads here at Emory, and 2 technicians. And then the asterisks are my previous techs and postbacks that are now either in PhD or MD PhD programs. And looking forward to getting to know you all as you come here in the fall, hopefully. I think we have time for questions, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Deanna. You truly are doing some very impactful work, and I'm very happy to have you here at Emory and in the MSP program. How many PhD students have you had over the years?
Sorry, I muted again. So I have these are my first 3 students, but 2 of them are writing their thesis actively right now. So they're gonna be defending in December and January, which is really fun because they came in a year apart. But I'll be hitting them at the exact same time.
Okay.
And my first student got her F31, and the other one is just submitted his F31, and the third is going to be skipping that because she has on a training grant for her F32. I should also say 2 of my students are staying on as postdocs, which is really, really fun and exciting.
I think Rita had a question.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. Um, I had a question about the MSP program more specifically. You guys mentioned some professionalization skills, so I'm wondering, Deanna or everybody else, like how do you support your students to make them more like professionalized? And what resources does Emory provide for that also?
Yeah. So let me answer part of that, and then Deanna can chip in, and Nick. So there are things that individual PIs do, right? So some of it is not sort of centralized. My lab, we do that a lot. We expose trainees to a lot of the translational scale of research. I run the cystic fibrosis program, so we work with physicians all the time. We have programs and have had programs at Emory that really bring in experts on non-academic career tracks and tell them about all these great things you can do with your PhD. The Laney Grad School has some of those programs that are about professionalization. And then we try really hard in MSP, and I'm sure they do this in other programs as well, to bring in alumni. We have an alumni symposium every year. So we bring in alumni, usually 3 different speakers from 3 different kind of career tracks, and ask them to tell our students about how they decided to go in that direction, what that means to go in that direction, what working in that kind of space is really about. You guys want to add what you do with your students?
Yeah, sure. So I second all that. I do very comfortable things with the people in my lab. For me, it's incredibly important that I get to know the goal of my students and their future career outcomes, and I tailor my mentoring of them for that goal. So my student Hannah just got back this summer for an internship at Merck. She was gone all summer. She submitted her paper before she left. She was at Merck, and then she came back and her paper was just accepted last week. Um, and so another person wants to do policy. I happen to have a lot of people who were like grad students with me or postdocs with me that are in policy. And so I connect him with them. And now he's going to be doing internship with that. And so a lot of it is getting to know you, what you want to do, and leveraging my network and my experience to help. And if I don't know your career path, like for instance, patent law, I haven't done that, but I know people that do. When we go to conferences, I introduce you broadly, but then also I do a lot of mentorship of skills that are going to be involved in every career. So in my opinion, every scientist is going to have to convince someone that science is important and ask for money for that. That's going to happen in government, in academia, in industry. Patent law, you're going to be telling someone else about why it's important so they can get money, but there's always some communication of that. So we work a lot about on science writing, both grants, papers, oral communication and presentations, things of that nature. But it's my most important goal. Grants are great, papers are great, but mentorship and helping you be what you want to be is why I do this job.
Yep, thank you.
Um,
If I would like to just go to the next slide just so that we can finish off the slide presentation, and then we can further open it up to more questions. Really what I want to show here are just some more of the key dates. As I had said before, our applications are due on December 1st of this year. And the way the MSP program, so all the faculty recruitment committee will assess and evaluate all of the applications. And then we will have our Zoom interviews so that each of the applicants can talk to at least, we usually have it between 3 and 4 faculty members in the MSP program, just to get to know you and talk about what some of your interests are. And then following those Zoom interviews, we have several dates set aside at the end of February, beginning of March, where we'll be bringing some of the applicants onto campus so that you can see our facilities and really have this a very science-focused type of on-campus visit. You can see many of the cores that we have, visit laboratories, and then after those deadlines, those dates, usually early March, we'll be extending offers. One date that I didn't have on here is that the national sort of recruitment end date, if you will, is the 15th of April. So all decisions have to be made by the applicants, the candidates, by the 15th of April. And that will essentially conclude the national recruiting season for 2024-2025. Here is our application code. So if you decide to apply to Emory's MSP's program, on the application portal, there'll be a place to add type in this code, and then the application fee will be waived. If you do have any problems with that, certainly let me know, but in the past that's been gone over quite well. our program leadership in the graduate school does a very good job with organizing that for us. So with that, I am going to stop the share and open it up for, let's see here. Oh.
Who has questions? I think Michelle had her question up. Saeed, what you got?
I've just asked you all to unmute, so it should have released that. You might still have to manually unmute yourself, but we should be in good shape.
Okay, Michelle, you want to go?
Yeah, I have two questions. So the NIH MSP T32 training grant, when are students eligible to be nominated for that?
We it's only students that are already in the program, and we like to cover the second year and maybe the third year as well per student. So most of the times we bring students onto the training grant in year 2, and very often they'll stay on until year 3, depending on the competition. So it's typically second and third year students.
Okay. And also for the statement of purpose, so there were 2 points listed for the statement of purpose, and one of them was why Emory MSP. What fraction of the statement of purpose should be about that? Because I could easily answer that completely, but I feel like it wouldn't necessarily be like about half of my statement of purpose, you'd be missing information about me, myself.
Yeah, so the way you're going to answer that might relate to your scientific interests, right? And so you can imagine that you spend the first part of the statement of purpose talking about your scientific interests and why you're interested in going to grad school to begin with, and then to jump into the Emory MSP component, you might say Emory has Professor blah blah and Professor blah blah and Professor blah blah who work in this area that I'm really interested in, and I've been following their work and seen their most recent papers, and that leads me to be interested in the MSP program, things like that. So there's not like a 50-50 ratio written in stone, but they might be woven together.
Yes.
The 2 parts.
Okay, so because most of what I've written for my statement of purpose is like my research background is like kind of extensive. Should I just trim that down then and speak more about those 2 bullet points?
I don't know that you need to trim it down, but one of the things that we consider when we're looking at these applications is fit. So if you can help us recognize that there's really good fit between your interests and what we can provide you, then that's going to work in your favor.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, Saeed had his actual hand up first, so let me go to him next.
Hello, thank you so much for great talk. And I have actually many questions, but I want to ask 3 main. So first is about I'm wondering to know that beside our main topic, is it possible to be trained in some like methods like clinical trial? For me, learning clinical trial is so important because this is the main part of pharmaceutical science and translational medicine. So besides, I would like to work on basic science.
Yeah.
So is it possible?
Let me answer that one first. So number one, we're not a pharmaceutical or a pharmacology, a pharmacy program. We are a pharmacology, right? So the study of it. But it is true that most of our faculty work on drug discovery and some drug development. We do have a component of the curriculum that is just now being developed, and Deanna is actually part of that as well. That is bringing more, exposure and background on the actual translation part, the translation of findings into the clinic, and how clinical research works, how the IRB works, and things like that at multiple levels, both investigator-initiated trials and big, huge pharmaceutical company-initiated trials, industry-sponsored trials. So that is in our curriculum. Yeah, I think that's really the main answer. So we have that in the pharmacology program's curriculum. On top of that, one of the things that Nick mentioned is the Master of Science in Clinical Research program that is led through our what's called the CTSA grant. It's a very large, it's the biggest grant at Emory. It's the Clinical Translational Science Agency grant that actually is joint with Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, and Morehouse School of Medicine. And through that MSCR program, they actually have a certificate program if you don't want to go all the way to earn a master's on top of your PhD. And that certificate program is the certificate program in certificate program. I'm forgetting the exact name of it. I'll find it and put it in the chat. But it's less than a master's, right? So it's a certificate program in translational research.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
The
welcome.
second question is about the policy of graduation. I know in some programs publication is mandatory, but what about this program, and the quality of publication is important or not?
Yeah. Definitely the quality of the publication we all care about, and your PI will definitely care about. And we absolutely have a requirement of at least one publication. And depending on the scope and magnitude of that first publication, you may need to have another one that's almost done by the time you defend. And if you remember back to my circle, right, the bottom one said generation of new knowledge. How do we know that you've generated new knowledge if you don't publish it and the peer review community says, yes, this is brand new, this is worth publishing, this is adding to the fund of knowledge in this field. So that's very common across PhD programs, because it really shouldn't be just that, well, my PI is running out of money, so I have to finish up and get out. That's not what's going to give you the nod to say you have done the work to earn a PhD. Again, the highest degree in the world is the PhD. So, it shouldn't be so surprising that there's a bar that you have to cross.
Thank you so much. Thank
You
you.
bet.
And the last one is about the application process. There is a part we should select some professor of interest. And can you please talk about this process? Who is our professor of interest? So after that, if we select those professors, those are the person we want to interview with us, or those are the PIs we want to do our rotation at future? Can you make it more clear? Thank you
Nick,
so
you want to
much.
handle that one?
Yeah, I wasn't able to hear the entire question. It had to do with your professors of interest.
Yeah, so just wanted to know that how we can sort out those professors. I mean, is there any specific criteria? For example, those professors should be, I mean, are those professors they want to have interview to us, or those PIs that we want to have rotation in their lab, something like that. Some information about this.
Okay, well, if on the MSP website, all of the all the faculty that are in the program are listed. And I guess more of the question for you is what type of research interests you? Do you want to look at cardiovascular research? Do you want to do neurodegenerative research? And then whose labs do you think that you would be a good fit in? Depending on the type of work that they're doing, I would also encourage you to reach out to those faculty members and see if they have some time to talk about some of the projects that they would anticipate having in their lab in the next several years. And then this is also information that you could put into your statement of purpose. Much like in the manner that Niall had talked about earlier, I really enjoy Nick Varvel's lab, or I enjoy Deanna Williams' lab because of the impact that she can make on personalized medicine in the realm of HIV research. And then that's already linking you up with faculty that are within the program. And then that's going to be seen in your application. During the interview process, at least in the past couple years, we really make every effort to sort of line you up with some of those faculty members that you're interested in. That's always not the case. Sometimes you have scheduling conflicts and so on, but we do try to link you up. The one thing that we will be doing this year and making our best effort is that when we bring you to campus, we will certainly be either getting you some face-to-face time with some of the faculty that you're interested in working with. If not the faculty, perhaps members of their lab, or organize a laboratory visit. So that's, I hope that answers your question. I know you've already come and seen me, and that's exactly what we like to see is sort of that enthusiasm and knowing a little bit about the work beforehand. Brandon, I see that you have your hand up. Brandon Bell. Hi, Brandon.
How you doing? Okay, so I have about just 3 questions too.
Okay.
The first one deals with I want to ask about the timeline of the PhD program. I know I've seen a lot of 6+ year students, or just to ask, is the 4 to 5 years still typical timeline, or?
The average in our program is 5.5 years, but that's been getting shorter. And some of those students that were, on the long in the tooth side, let's call it, had taken leaves of absence. So they still count in that year of incoming student, even if they had not been working, not been, a student for a year. So in other words, that list that you saw doesn't include the impact of leave of absence. So 5.5 years is our average.
And I think that is right in line with other PhD programs in the country. I don't think it deviates by too much from that, if I am recalling the current data.
Yeah, my student who just graduated on September 30th was 4 and a quarter years.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, the next one, I guess this is kind of specific, but I'm interested in the cardiology research. So I guess I'm not going to ask specifics of the area, but just, is there anything y'all could tell me about cardiology at Emory? Any kind of research that sticks out?
Sure. I'll start if anybody else wants to add in. One of the things that's really great about Emory that I brag on all the time is that the entire university is on one piece of land.
Yeah.
If you think about some institutions like Baylor, Baylor University is in Lubbock, Texas, way the heck up in the almost panhandle. But Baylor College of Medicine is in Houston, hundreds of miles away. A lot of places, the medical school is downtown where patients can have access to it. But the main campus is 30 miles away where you can fit a football stadium, right? So Emory doesn't have a football team. We don't have that problem. So Emory's entire 9 schools are on one piece of land: the business school, the law school, medical school, public health, etc. And I find that really wonderful because it means that, for instance, if you're working in the Department of Pediatrics, or if you're working in the Department of Pharmacology and Cell Biology or Chemical Biology, that's not a necessarily clinical department, right? It might not be in the hospital or something. But because our med school is on the same piece of land, you have access to all those people. So we have lots of physicians who do cardiovascular research in our program. We have a bunch of pulmonologists, clinical pulmonologists who do research in our program. And I really love that about this place. A lot of graduate schools are not set up that way. And to me, that's a real strength because that means that you're going to be exposed to not just really cool science, but science that's impactful and important, and exposed to patients and exposed to the translational side, which you can't really do at, the University of Timbuktu that's out in the middle of the woods somewhere, right?
Okay,
Was that
and
all for you, Brandon?
just one more about just narrowing, being able to narrow down your research. So when you come up with ideas, kind of a broad idea. Is there a way that y'all can talk about how y'all go about narrowing down your research so that way you have like a concise dissertation?
You mean for the statement of purpose?
Um, Kind of for like when you start your dissertation, when you're trying to
Oh,
make a proposal.
oh, I see. I see. Well, I mean, when you're in that stage, you're already going to be in your PI's lab. So you're going to be almost certainly proposing something that's pretty closely tied to what your PI does, right? So that's going to narrow things down a lot. And you will have made that decision, in the process of joining your PI's lab, right? You've decided to do a rotation with that PI. You've had a discussion with him or her on what project you might work on. Then you've narrowed it down even further, and your grant proposal that you'll write in the grants class doesn't even have to be related to what you did as a rotation student. Lots of times it's completely different. So it's not like a decision you can make in a night, right? That's a process that every student will go through. And in that process, you'll be narrowing down from the whole wide scope of biomedical research, all the different kinds of biomedical research you can do, down into a narrow project that you'll write your grant on.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Thanks, Brandon.
Jason?
Jay?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, I'm Jay, and thank you so much for the detailed overview of the MSP program. And honestly, I completed my undergrad studies at Emory University, and I absolutely enjoyed my experience there. And I also got a chance to work with like Dr. Blaine Roberts, where I met Lester Manley, a third year MSc program student. So which is why I'm so eager to apply to the MSc program. So I actually had two questions in general for you. And given that I'm an international student, I was wondering if the program has some sort of support system for international students in terms of funding opportunities or professional development resources.
Yep. Most of that comes through the Laney Grad School, not just through the program. But it's a really important point to make. We definitely don't just take students that are, citizens or green card holders. That is absolutely not on the table. For instance, my student that just offended on September 30th is from Paraguay. She's working on getting her green card, but she's been funded all the way through. So it never was an issue for her to have to worry about the source of her stipend. She could not go on the training grant because only people this is a federal government rule, right? It's not our rule. Only students that are either permanent residents or citizens can be funded through the federal T32 program. And Analia wrote a really great grant, but she couldn't submit it for an F-31 because she couldn't get funded that way. So the part of it is that, we don't ever want the students to have to worry about the source of their stipend. That's not your job. That should not be your worry. That's our worry. That's Nick's and Deanna's and my worry, and your PI's worry, to make sure you're going to be funded. The Laney Graduate School, when you get your letter of acceptance, it actually comes from the Laney Grad School, not from MSP. And it will say that we will provide you 5 years of funding, stipend funding. Now, when they say we, they don't necessarily mean the Laney Grad School. It's sort of we in combination. Some funding from the Laney Grad School, some funding from grant sources, some funding from your PI lab. But that's what you're promised is 5 years of stipend support. And, a lot of students go past 5 years, but it's not like your funding cuts off at 5 years if you're in good standing.
Right.
Does that answer it enough?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. My second question was relating to like the lab cultures within the program. Do you think the program encourages collaborations between labs?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head. Yes, yes. And in
And in
fact,
fact, most science, keep going.
I did the one thing that I also love about it, Emory, is really the collaborative atmosphere. Particularly, I routinely collaborate with a medicinal chemist who you sort of I'm doing the biology side of it, and he is doing the chemical biology side of it. And so essentially, he's making the drugs better, and then I'm testing them in various model systems, be it in cell culture models or in rodent models of what my interest is, neurologic disease. And again, it's this collaborative team science that truly makes that possible, right? I mean, very rarely can you have someone that is both a very talented, synthetic or medicinal chemist, and then also able to have the background to do the biology. It takes these collaborative efforts. It takes team science, and we get credit for that. I mean, we make it work. We make it work in a collaborative environment.
Yeah.
I don't know if Deanna or Niall have anything else to say there, but
Yeah, let me add to that. Emory is actually known across the country as one of the most collaborative places you can imagine. The fact is, this is what I tell faculty recruits all the time, is no one gives a crap what department you're in. They really don't. We don't have any walls that say someone in pharmacology and chemical biology can't collaborate with someone in pediatrics, right? So that's really a good thing. Another thing in this regard is that our having these various labs and various departments all on one piece of land really helps with that. And the graduate programs really help with that, particularly like ours, because ours is a non-departmental program. So you have two people from pharmacology and chemical biology here, plus me in pediatrics. We're all in the same program. We have 16 different departments represented in our program. No one cares what department you're in, truly. They only care if your research can help me with my research, and can we do something cool together. So for instance, when Deanna just gave her faculty seminar to join the program on Monday, I told her she and I are going to be best friends, because the stuff that she's looking at doing, particularly looking at the transporters that move these drugs, the anti-HIV drugs, in and out of the blood-brain barrier, she was naming the proteins that I study. So really, really great opportunities for us to collaborate that I didn't even know about. So Deanna, what you want to add?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I agree completely. To me, that's like the funnest part of the job. Um, I got broad PhD training too. I was in pathology department, so we did everything under the sun. And it gave me a really big appreciation for interdisciplinary work. And that was a big part of my attraction to come to Emory and be an MSP. So yeah, like talking with Niall about like similarities between cystic fibrosis and HIV, I would have never thought there'd be anything in common. And to give an example, I'm putting in 2 grants in the next few months, one about placenta. I am not a placenta biologist. I don't know anything about it beyond you have a baby and there's a placenta there. But it turns out the placenta has the same transporters as the blood-brain barrier, and it's really important for trying to prevent parents from passing HIV on to their babies. And so we're going to be studying these systems in that new context that requires me to collaborate with an OB-GYN, a clinical pharmacologist, right? Like people that do this work. I'm going to take my little bit of knowledge and we're all going to put it together. I have a similar grant I'm putting in on kidney. Again, I know we have 2 of them. I know they're important. But I mentioned every organ is impacted when you have HIV. And so my monkeys, I take their brains, but we save all the organs because we never know. And so I can give my kidneys to someone else. And we're looking at kidney pathology. A lot of these medications can be nephrotoxic, right? So it's the biggest, I don't know, just the most fun thing to be able to dream up new ideas you never even thought you would do it in a million years. Um, And not only is it possible, it's highly encouraged. We have so many PIs that have shared grants, even formally co-mentoring students. So you can be working in two different labs and like combining their strengths to be able to make your own unique project. So it's very much possible and encouraged.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deanna. I think we have time for perhaps one last question or two. Julienne, did I say your name properly?
Julianne,
Julienne,
Hi, it's Julianne.
Julienne,
Yeah.
okay.
like fries.
Oh, exactly. Thank you so much for the presentation. My question was, for the students in the program that struggle, what would you say like their most common hangup is, or what are some common pitfalls of students in the program?
Yeah, really wonderful question. And this is something that we go over extensively during the orientation process when you're just landing. And I would say that one of the biggest historical sources of problem is students not recognizing the difference between undergrad, which we've all done, and grad school. Grad school, yes, there are some courses. Yes, you have to pass them. A lot of them are sort of pass-fail level. We don't even give letter grades, right? So being able to change your mindset from I just got to go to this class. It's at 9 a.m. Then I go home and do something else, and then come back to another class. So getting out of the undergrad mindset and shifting into a mindset where the key thing that you're coming to grad school to do is to learn how to be a scientist. It's not to go through this ginormous curriculum and tick all the boxes and then you get handed your degree at the end of it, right? So grad school is about learning how to think like a scientist, whether you stay in academia, go in industry, go to biotech, blah, 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 all those career options, you're still being trained to think like a scientist. And that's why in that circle diagram, we weren't talking about cardiology research or, CF research or some kind of specific type of research. Those were the commonalities. All those things were about learning how to be a scientist and think like a scientist. So that's been probably the biggest hurdle that students struggle to get over. We provide lots of help in getting over that hurdle, right? We have the DGSs really work with our students heavily in the first year to kind of help make that shift. We go out and drink beer together and talk about problems and, try to provide a very supportive environment. Like I said at the beginning, we try really hard to have a very strong, supportive community and a very rigorous program. So that those two things can work together. If we just had a rigorous program without the supportive community, this would be like sink or swim. And that's not what we're about, right? We want you to swim. We don't want you to sink. So we work with you. Is that good? Okay. Do we want to do one more from Godwin?
Yes.
Real quick. Godwin, what you got?
Okay, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed this. I just only have one question.
Okay.
So, my question is, during the application process, so for a candidate that don't have a master's degree, does it limit the person's chances of getting admitted?
Not at all.
Okay.
Most applicants don't have master's degrees.
Okay. Then lastly, please, is there any way to shed more light on life in Emory generally?
Life at Emory or life in Atlanta?
Life in Atlanta.
Atlanta is a great place to live. I've been here 30 years, love it, have no interest in leaving. It is an up and coming city. If you get outside of Atlanta, yeah, there you go. There's a lot of beauty around the state of Georgia. That looks like the North Georgia mountains, Nick, right? I'm actually leaving tomorrow to go to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. It's just 2.5 hours north. Really beautiful spot. There's a lot of great food in this town. I actually was talking to somebody Yeah, I was talking to an applicant pulmonologist on Monday.
Okay.
He's coming from Boston,
Okay.
and I told him Atlanta has an amazing food industry. That this foodies just love it here. Yeah, Michelle agrees with me. There's just so much food to enjoy around here. It's a really great city. Love it. Love it.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for
Shilpa, real
coming.
quick.
Okay, one more.
Last one. Shilpa.
Hello
Okay.
everyone. I just want to ask like what specific qualification or educational background you're looking when a candidate applying for MSP program. So basically I am from Doctor of Pharmacy background and my MS is in regulatory affairs. I really wanted to be in MSP program. So am I eligible for applying that? I just want to know about it.
Nick, you go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly, that most, if not all of our applicants have a science background. They have, usually they're coming in with either a degree in biology, some even chemistry. But again, strong science, certainly upper level science classes. Many coming in, you should probably have taken a couple upper level, either calculus or advanced math classes as a part of pharmacology program. I will say though that also usually our sort of the top applicants are coming in with research experience, whether it's as maybe they've taken a post back, maybe they've done extensive research as an undergrad, but or even a part of a master's thesis. But that research component is something that our program has looked for in the past couple of years. We want to make sure that you truly know what you're getting into on that research side of it, because that is what will, that's ultimately what you're going to be doing for, on average, 5 to 6 years. So we want to make sure that you have a handle on that.
If I have a research experience in undergrad and if I published a paper, is that okay?
Very helpful.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very helpful. If you've had, poster presentations, abstracts, even if it's at the, even if it's at the local level, your institutions, that demonstrates your ability to generate data, to make a figure, and then to share it with the larger community, with your own community or a larger community. Papers even further than that. That's more of extensive reach. So these are all pluses, things that we look for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So finally, I just want to thank everyone for coming. These were all fantastic questions. I know I had a great time. I love talking about myself and Emory and the research, the fantastic research that we do. So again, thank you all for coming. Niall and Deanna, thank you again for joining me this evening. Both of you were fantastic, and I'm excited to have another recruiting season ramping up. Another great cohort of students.
And contact us if you have further questions, okay?
Yep.
Don't be shy.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.